So what happens when a winning point guard gets a full offseason to level up? For sophomore Cayden Boozer, it's a chance to help Duke lead them to the mountaintop.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Thanks so much for being here with us today on this Wednesday, August 26th, 2026. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. On today's show, my good friend Jeff Fedotin of Forbes is back with us. We're going to be talking about some reasons of optimism for one Mr. Cayden Boozer going into his sophomore season. We'll talk about the play recently of recruits Adan Diggs and AJ Williams, where their recruitment currently is trending. And then also a little bit about Bryson Howard. What's going on with the incoming freshman? Could there be a path to playing time for him? And so much more. Excited to have you with us here on your number one place for everything going on inside the world of Duke athletics. Let's bring on Jeff Fedotin from Forbes, who's here with us now. And Jeff, I really enjoyed yesterday's show, getting a chance to talk about reasons for optimism with the returners for Duke. I got three segments. I did Gongba, Sar, and Foster. I didn't want Cayden Boozer to feel left out, my friend, so that's why I had to call on you, and we get to shine some light on the great player that is Mr. Cayden Boozer. Hope you're doing well, Jeff.
Doing well. Great to be here, JJ. And what a cool segment. These three reasons for optimism. And you called the right person, JJ, because I am, the front runner of the Cayden Boozer fan club. There's so much reason for hope and optimism for Cayden.
Yeah, I call shotgun then. I'm going to be right up there with you at the front as we're on this journey. So let's take a look at why you should be so optimistic about the year that he's going to be able to turn in. First things first, he is a winning player. We talk about it a lot with his twin brother, Cameron, who's obviously no longer going to be on the Duke squad this year as he's off to the NBA, but they went everywhere. And Duke ran through the ACC this past season. Cayden Boozer really turned it on in the ACC tournament, had a really good first half and start to the second half for Duke in their Elite Eight game, even against UConn. People just want to turn to that turnover at the end and let that tell the whole story. That's just not fair. But the fact that he already knows how to run a winning team, I think first and foremost is the biggest reason for optimism.
Absolutely. The ultimate winner. And you said how well he did down the stretch too. He did. I mean, with him, when Foster was out and he was the main guy, Duke won 3 games in the ACC tournament, 3 games in the ACC tournament. So as he was running the show against very good competition, Duke won 6 games in a row. I also think a reason for optimism, JJ, is that I don't know if there was a player on Duke's squad last year who showed more improvement. I think Dame Sarr, you can throw in that he really, he really found his niche as a defensive stopper. But Cayden Boozer was not getting a lot of run early in the season. And then you have the guy who's the lead guard, leads him to an ACC tournament title, leads him to an Elite Eight. When you go from limited minutes to that, and he was really good in the ACC tournament and NCAA tournament. Like you said, that, obviously that last play gets understandably a bad rap for that, but he was really good in that game. Duke is not in the position to win that game at all if it wasn't for him.
And now we get a full year where Cayden Boozer is going to be one of the guys fighting for his own minutes in a really crowded and competitive backcourt. Looking at his numbers that he had as a freshman, how about finishing with 113 assists as a freshman against 51 turnovers? On average, that's a 2.2 to 1 assist to turnover ratio as a freshman. Again, he proved that he didn't need to dominate the basketball to affect winning, but when he did have the ball in his hands, he knew how to organize the offense, get Duke into these sets. I said it. You could go back and listen to the early shows throughout last season, how much more tempo he was able to play with as a freshman, which you don't always see from guys coming in. So now we're going to talk about a sophomore who's got 38 games in his career under his belt already, that knows Jon Scheyer's system, that's going to be trusted by the head coach, that is well aware of what the conversation on the outside is about his play. I think that's only going to motivate Cayden going into the new year.
Absolutely. And I like what you said about him being a playmaker. We know he plays with pace. He's a pass first player. And I'm really interested to see if Duke ups the tempo a little bit. We've kind of expecting that, last year when you have a guy like Cam Boozer, you kind of going to go to him in the post a bit. But this year, the team is so deep. And that, especially in the backcourt where they have so many guards, so many guys who can initiate the offense. I think Duke would be best served to push the pace, run a little bit, take advantage of that depth. And who better than a guy like than Boozer, who's a great passer, has a great handle, can make plays to really push that tempo. You mentioned that great assist to turnover ratio.
Jeff, maybe that's the subliminal messaging that we're getting from Duke right now. Keep in mind, classes started this week, and one of the first clips we see from Duke was early morning conditioning workouts that these guys were doing running up and down the floor, right? I mean, maybe they're letting the world know, look, we're going to be in shape and able to make things happen for 40 full minutes in this game.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fun. We'll take whatever nuggets we can get kind of during a slow period. And yeah, that you're right. Maybe that's the subliminal message. The message I got is, oh man, better them than me. Those 6:30. I don't like cardio any time of day, especially not 6:30.
Way too early for that. No kidding. Second reason for optimism for Mr. Cayden Boozer, his finishing ability way better than his scoring average might suggest. This is another point that we had throughout last season. Sure, you'd give Caleb Foster the nod on the outside shooting approach, but Cayden really did a great job around the rim, shooting 50% overall from the floor, an excellent 59% on 2-point attempts as a freshman. And again, for a 6'4" guard, really impressive. He can get downhill. He's finishing through contact. He's able to use his arms to get around centers that are coming over, and averaging only 7.7 points per game as a freshman on just 5 field goal attempts per game. That's where this sophomore projection gets fun, because you could expect a little bit more shots maybe from Boozer and that number to go up. I love his finishing ability.
Yeah, that's a part of his game that I didn't really realize he had until we saw him emerge as a starter after Foster's injury. He's not to this extent, because of any modern Duke player, I think the best around the rim was actually Kyrie Irving. I think Kyrie's is almost as good as anyone in the NBA. Just the way he just can contort around the rim and just make. But he's I don't want to say that, but I saw a little bit of that aspect in Boozer's game, the way he was able to maneuver around the rim and really get a shot. And we forget, it's Duke, and we roll out such big lineups. We forget about that, but Boozer he's a legit 6'4" at least. And so he uses that frame to his advantage. Again, that doesn't seem when you have so used to having these 6'5", 6'4" guards, but that's another reason why he's so good at that skill. He's tall, pretty strong guy for a guy who's only entering his sophomore season.
The third reason for optimism for Cayden Boozer, I want to talk about the most obvious weakness in his game is the case for him to become dramatically better this season if he can improve on that. And that simply would be the outside shooting, right? 30% from three-point range, not where you want it to be, but shooting 81.3% from the free throw line. The touches there, that's something he's been working on all offseason. How can you not be optimistic? Like, if that's the worst thing we're talking about your game as a guard, get the shots up, put the work in, see him go through in the early games of the season, and we could see a very much improved Cayden Boozer.
Absolutely. You mentioned his free throw shooting ability. I always think that's a good, kind of bellwether to whether you can improve that 3-point shooting. And the fact that he's so proficient, was such a good free throw shooter, I agree that that is an area with added shots, added practice over a whole year that he's going to get better. And JJ, we'll give a bonus reason, just the fact that the reason for this is who is going to be more motivated than Cayden Boozer. You talked about how he's the ultimate winner. The way the season ended last year, he blamed himself. There were a lot of reasons. Yes, it was an awful play in the loss to UConn, but he also was very good in that game, and there were other reasons Duke lost, but he took it upon himself. He's been hearing chatter on social media. I was so thrilled that he came back to Duke, just that that's not how he's going to end his career. He's going to have something to prove. We're going to get a very motivated Cayden Boozer this year.
Yeah, Jeff, you're adding on, and so therefore I'm gonna break the rule myself, and we'll go beyond 3 reasons for optimism. I'll give a 4th. I think his brotherly pride is going to be on the line as well. I mean, Cam Boozer this season will be very much so in the conversation for NBA Rookie of the Year. I know Cayden Boozer is going to be motivated by this. One, incredibly happy for his brother to have that success, but he wants to taste it too. Like, this is someone who has NBA dreams of his own. The family motivation in itself, you don't need to say anything else. Like, that's a big reason for him to step up his game going into the new season. His brothers play, while they'll be playing apart for the first time, that's going to motivate him, hype him up, and get him going.
Absolutely. Got to prove that he's not riding in his brother's on his brother's coattails, right?
Yes, that's exactly what we're excited to see for Mr. Cayden Boozer. Many, many reasons to be optimistic about what he's going to be able to bring to the table for Duke basketball in this 26-27 season. We're due for a break. We'll step aside. We've got a few Duke basketball recruiting updates. Guys possibly trending elsewhere. Interesting. We'll give you the latest here in a moment. All right, Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There are more live events than ever worth seeing right now. Games, concerts, comedy shows, festivals. Hard part usually isn't deciding what you want to attend. It's actually getting the tickets. Between long wait times, confusing checkout processes, and those surprise fees, buying tickets can sometimes feel harder than it should. That's why so many fans are turning to Game Time, an app built to make buying tickets simple. It's upfront pricing, getting a look at the seat views before you buy, and exclusive saving opportunities that help you get to the events you want without the usual hassle. I've recently been able to go to a couple of MLB games throughout the course of this summer, and the best part is that seat view in the app. I know what to expect when I'm walking into the ballpark and into the stadium. No surprises whatsoever. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, let's talk Duke basketball at the next level in the class of 2027. It's that time of year with school starting, basketball players looking at their calendar, official visits being booked, who's coming to campus, who's going to be in the fold and in the mix. And we've been talking all summer about Cager Knippel being the first commit in the class for Duke. And now 8 players hold scholarship offers in this class of 2027. Just a few weeks ago, Jeff, it was quiet as can be on the recruiting front for Jon Scheyer.
Yeah, starting to heat up a little bit. Going to be really interesting to see where these guys go and just how the kind of, it's been rumored for years that with now the transfer portal being a bigger deal, that Duke is going to take a smaller class, but hard to say no when so many 5-stars want to go there. Is this the year Duke finally does take a smaller batch of recruits?
This has been a roller coaster because when you didn't see all the offers coming through, that's the point you wanted to make, right? Is that, okay, this is going to be one of those small classes. Then all of a sudden, there are 8 scholarship offers that have been presented. Maybe not. Maybe there's going to be an interest in getting all these guys. And now some of these updates, maybe it is trending back towards a smaller class. Big updates that have been provided, particularly on A.J. Williams, one of the top players in the class. He was the number 1 player in the class of 2028, recently reclassified to the class of 2027, was teammates with JoJo Boomche for FIBA U17 World Cup, and a new team emerging for Mr. A.J. Williams, and it is not the Duke Blue Devils, Jeff.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I actually was pretty optimistic for A.J. Williams after he reclassified, but now, there's a lot of BYU's getting the hot name in contention for him. Kind of interesting. He's an Atlanta kid kind of going almost across the country. a little surprising, but hey, BYU is a big player. They have very deep pockets. They've landed some just huge recruits, starting with DePanza, and then Branch is a big name to hear from this year. So maybe Williams is the guy there. But yeah, this is one that I actually thought was kind of a Duke lean. So I was a little bit surprised to hear some of this recent chatter.
Yeah, and BYU of all places,
Right.
to your point, like I thought maybe it'd be one of the other schools that had been in the mix a little bit longer, but you mentioned the run that they've been on as of late. BYU pivots when Mark Pope leaves and takes the Kentucky job. They're able to get Kevin Young from the NBA, who had been in Phoenix, and they start spending the money they need to bring these top guys in. Rob Wright was a big transfer they got from Baylor, so they're clearly making things happen. And we'll see. It's not done yet. Just the recruiting reports out there are that A.J. Williams and BYU might end up being the pairing of those two parties. Adan Diggs is another top guard in this class out of Arizona. And surprise, surprise, it's the in-state school that Duke has been in many recruiting battles with, most recently for the services of Cameron Williams. But maybe this time around with Adan Diggs, it's not going in Duke's direction.
Yeah, you're right. After winning against Cam Williams, another big Arizona versus Duke battle, it's kind of fun how you have a little bit, this is a powerhouse team that Duke had a matchup. Arizona went to Cameron, then Duke goes to Arizona back-to-back years, and then Duke faces them in the Sweet 16. Duke wins when Cooper Flagg has an amazing game. So there's a little bit of a rivalry there. And Jon Scheyer, actually, Arizona, he was a Duke guy, but Arizona, that was on one of the places that he looked to seriously when he was recruited himself. So it's kind of funny, this recruiting battle. You knew that this would be a tough guy to get out of Arizona, given where the direction that program is going. Diggs, I would love to see him in a Duke uniform. He's a little bit of a common guy. This is where Duke has a little bit of depth. So I think if Duke loses out, you don't know who's staying or going, but the depth that Duke has at guard, and with the new 5-and-5 rule, you would think Duke gets somebody back, and also a guy that we've talked about, the depth in the guards. Diggs is listed about 6'4", kind of the size of Bryson Howard. Now, Diggs is a little bit of a different player, but that's another guy with the same kind of frame Duke could potentially get back. So yeah, I'm not too worried about kind of the guard situation, whoever comes and goes, because I think somebody, when you're talking Blackwell, Foster, Boozer, Rippey, I mentioned Howard, I think Duke gets more than one of those guys back. So I'm very talented player in Diggs, but Duke can certainly, I think, withstand the blow if he does stay in state with Arizona.
Yeah, and again, the pivot, when you look at all of this, would just simply be, well, if it goes well with Blackwell here, Duke could position themselves to be a player for a transfer again next season. And so maybe the big addition that you're making is not from the high school ranks, but it's going to be someone coming in from the transfer portal, a la John Blackwell. Maybe they've got an up-and-rising recruit like a JoJo Boomche that joins the mix late. But again, 8 scholarship offers. This is just 2 case examples of players not trending towards Duke, but that doesn't mean names like Beckham Black or DeMarcus Henry or Asa Montgomery could not, possibly still end up coming to Duke.
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't know exactly who will be, but I think we can be pretty confident in Jon Scheyer that he's never had a bad recruiting cycle. I don't think this is going to be it. So.
No, he figures out a way to get it done. Let me give some love. Louis Uvwo and then Dangan Gore, other guys in that class that actually were trending more in Duke's direction. We'll see if they're able to hold on to that, get these visits heading in the right place, because that'd be some good pieces to put together in your class. Again, those more being wings, front court players, and the back court is already in such a big spot. Another reason why this could be the case is because, like we said, the depth is going to be awesome going into next season. There could be larger roles for somebody like Bryson Howard, but maybe we don't even need to wait until next season for Bryson Howard to be one of those go-to guys for Duke. Maybe it's this year. Let's touch on that here in a moment on Locked On Blue Devils. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen and your first watch here today. For your second listen, go check out Locked On Sports Today or Locked On College Basketball. Two of our shows across the networks giving you the latest storylines to stay on top of. With the college basketball show, obviously, that's our friends Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. They're talking about this round ball sport all the time. New college rulings coming out day by day. Who's eligible? Who's ineligible? Who's suing who? What in the world's going on? That's why you got to go to college basketball to stay on top of all of that. Please be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review here on Locked On Blue Devils. All right, Jeff Fedotin's hanging out with me on the show, and I want to talk about a player that has been flying under the radar for Duke when you look at their roster for 2026-2027. And Adam Finkelstein, one of the top basketball evaluators for CBS Sports and 247 Sports, the intel he's been receiving say that Bryson Howard is a name to watch out for with Duke. And it feels like this is becoming customary with Duke basketball. Con Knipple feels like one of the more recent examples as well, where it's the least heralded recruit of the bunch, and then all of a sudden they get on campus, and it's like, wait a minute, Duke recruits great players across the board, so it shouldn't surprise many that Bryson Howard's making a name for himself so far.
Yeah, and this is really interesting to hear, and I think there is such great variance to, a lot of the Duke players, we know how deep this Duke team is going to be, but we kind of know what we're going to get. You know what you're going to get from Pat Gongba. You know what Caleb Foster. You certainly know the defensive intensity that Dame Sarr is going to bring. I think there's no player with greater variance of what he could be than Bryson Howard. He could provide, you were talking on one of your previous pods about shooting might be one of the few weaknesses of this team. Bryson Howard might bring that shooting. He's a guy with what we've heard from Finkelstein that Howard could be a one and done guy. He has that kind of talent, or he could be a guy we've just mentioned, the backcourt depth. And then when you move to the swing positions, you have guys like Dame Sarr. He could be a guy who's also doesn't get that many minutes. He could be, because of the depth, he could be, reduced to more of an 8th, 9th guy off the bench. So it's so interesting. I'm really curious to see whether he's more of a bench guy getting limited minutes, or if he's a guy that they need that shooting. The guy that ends up being a first-round pick is just he's going to be such an intriguing player to see what he does this season.
Bryson Howard will win minutes simply because his skill set complements the Duke Stars better than some players who might be viewed as more highly regarded prospects, a la that outside shooting, the three-point shot that he's got, shooting 46.2% from three on the Nike EYBL circuit. When the signing took place, Jon Scheyer called him one of the premier shooters in the entire country. Again, 46.2% from three on the Nike EYBL circuit. Duke's got that right on his bio page when you go to the school's roster breakdown for the team. Want to let you know this guy is for real. If he can defend, if he can hit open threes and play without the basketball and fit in, that's how you get on the floor, Jeff.
Absolutely. Hey, it's in his DNA. I mean, his dad, Josh Howard, was the ultimate 3-and-D guy before really even that term was kind of around, both at Wake Forest and then in the pros for the Dallas Mavericks. So, yeah, if he's anything like that, absolutely, they'll find a place for minutes for him.
Again, it's tough because this team is so talented. It is so loaded. If I'm asked, okay, who's impacted by this potentially, I hate to say it, it's the name that we've been talking about a good bit this offseason. It's a player like Sebastian Wilkins, potentially. I think the other guys like Adan Sarr on the wing, all the guards that Duke has are going to be in a pretty fine spot. But Sebastian's got his work cut out for him. He's clearly talented and earned the scholarship offer and opportunity to play at Duke for a reason, but redshirted this past year. Now you've got tons of upside with Bryson Howard coming in. So if we were to kind of point to one player who could possibly not benefit from Howard ascending, it'd be Mr. Sebastian Wilkins, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. Looking at the roster right now, that perhaps he could be the odd man out, but I'm still optimistic. I love the fact that he came back when a lot of people thought he would not, that he loved this program so much, grew up a Duke fan, has been well chronicled, that he came in a year early, even just to be a redshirt guy, though that doesn't cut. So I'm really rooting for him that it works out. But hey, man, you never know. He's a good player too, so I'm hoping that he can find his role next year.
Okay, before we get out of here on today's show, excited about this roster that Scheyer's put in place, the recruiting with what's happening in 2027, and again, optimistic reasons for Cayden Boozer to improve. Bit of a left turn before we get out of here. I did want to acknowledge what a lot of the basketball community has been talking about over the last 24 hours. Certainly, Duke people have had their opinions of some pretty disturbing videos posted on Instagram once again from Mr. Kyle Singler, the 2010 Final Four most outstanding player, 4-year player at Duke, a Duke graduate, had an NBA career primarily playing for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And it's just a tough watch, Jeff, trying to get all the details and plenty of reports out there with people trying to get Kyle Singler some help.
Yeah, really a cry for help, that video. Very sad to see not only what he said, but just the way he looked. He looked pretty strung out. The tone, it sounded like he wasn't healthy. So just we're wishing the best for him, praying that he gets the help he needs to get back on track. He's actually a guy I've thought all along that he should have his jersey retired, hanging in the rafters. The 4-year career he had to be the most outstanding player of the Final Four, to win a title. What a decorated Duke career he had. So wishing him the best and that things turn around for the better for him.
Yeah, I know college basketball analyst Seth Davis had some posts about this with talking about what this is like to watch from afar. I mean, this is a saga that truthfully has been happening for more than a year, going on 2 years, where you're kind of seeing these strung out. Like I talked about that from Kyle Singler, and it just talks about, what you never really know what's going on in people's lives and where they're at. And it's a quick reminder that earlier this week we celebrated Jon Scheyer's 39th birthday. He's the winningest head coach to open up a college basketball coaching career. And Kyle Singler, 38 years old, 1 year younger than Scheyer, teammates, or part of the brotherhood together, just totally in a different world right now. It was troubling with this one because it was the first time in this strung out state that Kyle Singler brought up the name Coach K and was trying to claim being set up and stolen money and various things like that. Again, it's honestly a tough watch to see where he's at right now.
Absolutely. And, everyone, I'm assuming he meant Coach K. I've watched the video a couple of times, and he says Coach. We all assume it's Coach K because who that is. But, given his mental state,
good point. Fair.
Could be a high, but like every social media post has had Coach K. I've watched it a couple of times. You don't necessarily know that, but yeah, I'm sure that Coach K has been reaching out and been trying to get him help, and that's maybe that's why he even. We're assuming he invited.
Yeah, exactly. But we haven't. Coach K hasn't said anything publicly.
Right.
Jon Scheyer hasn't said anything publicly. A lot of it is probably respect to Kyle and trying to figure out ways to navigate this and being close with his family and what that's like. So obviously, like you said, prayers for Kyle Singler. Hopefully, next time we're talking about him, it's in a much more positive light. I would believe that the Oklahoma City Thunder, the NBA Players Association, Duke, all these parties have tried their best to help out Kyle Singler and just need a little bit more help to see exactly where we can send that one. So wanted to touch base on that, not ignore what was happening there in the Duke world. And certainly we'll see how this story continues to play out. Jeff, man, really appreciate you coming on by the show today, talking about what's happening in the Duke world with me as you do. How can people follow along and support your work?
Yeah, thanks, JJ. Always fun to be on your show. We started out the show talking about Cayden Boozer, and I actually wrote an article about Cayden and Cameron when they were in that State Farm commercial, that really funny one behind the scenes. Well, that actually led to there's for the NFL season, there's a State Farm ad with Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes in it. I actually, in June, when it's kind of the slow time for the NFL, I was behind the scenes. I was on the commercial shoot, watching the shoot and talking to Andy Reid and how they did it. So there's a really cool behind the scenes look at that. So search my name, Jeff Fedotin, Fedotin, on Forbes.com right now to read that behind the scenes story of the latest cool State Farm commercial this airing.
Super awesome. Jeff, we'll talk soon. Okay.
Thanks so much, JJ.
All right, Jeff Fedotin from Forbes joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. That's going to bring our show today to a close, guys. We love every one of you for what you do supporting this show. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Take a moment, if you will, like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let's run the numbers up. Thank you for your support here of the podcast. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.